This is Backstory, the story behind the story from the Quiet Achiever book. Welcome to Backstory. Backstory is the story behind the story from the Quiet Achiever book. Now, as you were reading this book, you might have been wondering, what's up with all these QR codes that are spread out across the book? Well, as I was writing the book and going through the editing process, not every single story that I wanted to share actually made it to the final pages. But at the same time, I also didn't feel like it was right for those stories to completely disappear. And so that's how I came up with the idea of Backstory. I want to find a way to share some extra bonus content for people who want it as they're reading the book. And the idea behind Backstory actually came from 3 places. The first place was from watching movies on DVDs or Laserdiscs. If those of you are familiar, there might be in your favorite movie a director's cut version of the movie. And if you change the audio tracks, you might actually hear your director or an actor from the film actually sharing behind the scenes knowledge about the film or what was happening in that particular scene. It's a behind the scenes look into what went into the movie. And there were only probably a couple of movies that I actually enjoyed enough to actually listen to the director's cut and listen to the narration. Or it could have been a movie like Interstellar, where there were so many things happening, you don't quite understand what was going on, and you kind of want a little bit of more explanation. So that was the first place source of inspiration for Backstory. The second and more personal one was from game books when I was growing up. When I was growing up, this was in the early 80s. This was well before the time of search engines and Google. None of these things existed. And we had what we call game books. They were kind of fantasy novels. The one that I remember is the Lone Wolf series by Joe Dever. And how game books work is like this. It's written, you got first couple of pages that kind of set the scene of the story. But then you get to a fork in the road, where then you can choose different options of paths to actually go down. Every one of these paths is on a numbered paragraph that's in the book. So the first option might be 2, 3, 4. Then you got to flip to section 2, 3, 4. And then the story continues there. Or in a different path, it might flip to section number 38. And then that story goes down that path over there. Sometimes they play a trick on you where you don't just simply flip to the number of the section that you want to go to, but you have to perform a task, some kind of number puzzle, some kind of thing that you have to solve. And when you actually solve that problem, that is a section that you actually follow up from. And as a kid, there was some of these puzzles that I just couldn't figure out myself. So in the end, what I did was I started reading the book chronologically and trying to figure out which one of these numbered paragraphs makes the most logical sense. And again, this was before the time of Google. You couldn't really find out where other people, how did they solve that puzzle, what section did they lead on to. And I loved it. I loved those books when I was growing up. So that was the second source of inspiration. The third one is much more common. It's from Easter eggs in games. When I was growing up, I enjoyed playing games. I still do playing them now. And I wanted a way to share kind of the story behind the story, someplace where people who cared enough could actually find out a little bit more detail behind the story. The third inspiration is actually from the Easter eggs in games. When I was growing up, I loved computer games. Even now, I enjoy computer games. And I love it when game makers actually leave in little puzzles or little things for people who really, really enjoy the game to actually go in and get something special just for them because they made the extra effort. As I'm recording this particular episode, I had also just finished recording the entire audiobook. And you might have heard, if you have the audiobook version of this book, I also wanted Backstory to be a place where I could be more conversational, where I can be a lot more like myself, how this other self that I am when I'm not being the narrator of the audiobook. So you get a small glimpse into who I am and what my personality might be like. That's all for this episode. I hope you enjoy Backstory. Bye for now.